You have done much more study than many of us do in terms of meditation and japa and all. So again, it's a little more individual kind of a question. But in your experience, what is God?
The $64,000 question. Well, from the perspective of Sanatana Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, of course, is actually a monotheistic religion. This is a misconception that a lot of people have. People will see all the devas and devis, and sometimes they think that Hinduism is polytheistic, that there's the belief that there are many, many gods ultimately. That's not the case. Like the Western religions, Sanatana Dharma itself believes that ultimately there is one God. There is a slight difference between our monotheism versus the Abrahamic monotheism of the West, in that we take a much deeper, a much more profound approach to what is God. For the Western religions, God tends to be completely transcendent, completely separate from us as people, completely separate from the world. For Hindus, on the other hand, God certainly is transcendent in that He is purely spiritual, but at the same time, He is purely immanent in all things as well. There is no place where God is not present. In fact, we go so far as to say that it's God's presence itself that gives meaning and substance and reality and existence to everything that there is. Literally every atom that exists because of God's presence within it. Therefore, one of the names for God is Narayana, He who sustains all beings, who sustains all reality. It's quite literally like God is holding us up in His divine palm. And without His sustaining of us, we just wouldn't exist. I like to tell people that if you can point to anything in which God does not exist, you're pointing to nothing. Because quite literally, if God were not present there, there would be nothingness at whatever you would point to. So yes, we as Hindus believe that God is present everywhere. And as such, we try to live in such a way that we see God's presence at all times, and we know that we're never alone. We know that at all times in our life, at times when we're doing well and we're prospering, but also at times when things are not going well, when we're sad, when we're depressed, when we're confused about life, when we're going through tribulations, God still is there. And the key is to always be aware of this. And if we can have that awareness of God's presence in our life, and if we can know that our very best friend, our most loving friend, is always with us, always there, then we can have a life of peace and happiness and fulfillment. Then all fear is taken away. So this is the Hindu conception of God. God as friend. At least this is how I like to approach God. The way we know God is through bhakti, through devotion, through love. And knowing that God is the source of all love, if we also can reciprocate with God, knowing that this being is a being who is always concerned about our welfare, who is always the antaryaman, the inner witness, who doesn't judge us, who is always there within our heart, seeing us during our best times and during our worst times, when we wouldn't want anyone to see us. God is there witnessing and loving us, and just waiting for us to quite literally turn around and realize we're not alone. This is the nature of God, and we can know this God through love, through loving Him. And then by extension, when we have that bhakti, when we have that love of God, by extension, we cannot help but love all beings. This is why when we have God in the center of our life, our family life gets better. Our relationships get better. Our relationships with our employees, if we have employees, or with our bosses. Because now, suddenly, our relationships are permeated with love. And when that love is there, barriers break down. People like us more. They trust us more because they see that there's something special about us. They see that we have this love of God, And then conversely, we love them more because we see them as also being servants of God. Whether they know it or not, that doesn't matter. We see them as servants of God.
That is so nice to hear, and I just want to take a moment from you and talk to my viewers directly. My guest today, Star, is Dr. Frank Morels, and who also prefers to be addressed as Dharma Pravartaka Acharya. And that's what he's doing, spreading the message of Sanatana Dharma all around. And what he just shared takes us to our questions. When we have our set of problems right in front of us, or maybe somebody is not being nice to us, or maybe there are financial problems, and what he said, God is there and a nice man. We say, what is this man? Is it practical what he's talking about? So let's go back to him, and on this day, which is very close to Festival of Colors, Holi, how we can increase the colors of joy by increasing this awareness which you just referred to, and is it practical?
First, I like your analogy, the colors of joy. That's very appropriate. Yes, it's extremely practical. And this is the reason why. As we live in this world, we cannot avoid relationship. You know, this is what it means to live in this world. We have relationship with everything around us. We have relationship with other living beings, our family, our friends, even strangers, you know, especially here in New York, you know, where it's so crowded, we can't help but bump into strangers all the time. So we can't avoid relationship. And very practically speaking, this is the question, is do we want to have relationships in which there is conflict and non-understanding, which therefore practically will lead to hardships for ourselves, or do we want all of these relationships to actually be positive in nature? You know? So again, when we have God in our lives, what ends up happening is those barriers just dissolve. And very practically speaking, when we know God, we have more peace and happiness. There have even been studies that have been done that have shown that religious people suffer from less depression. Religious people tend to even live longer. I believe it's 5 or 6 years longer on average than people who are not very religious. So even from a very practical perspective, it's healthy for us to be spiritual versus non-spiritual. And then, of course, again, when we're spiritual people, what ends up happening is our relationships with everyone just naturally improves. And as a result of that, our family life is happier. You know, we get along with our children better. We get along with our wife or husband better. And even on the workplace, when we are known as someone who has spiritual qualities, even just from a very practical economic perspective, if you have a boss, who will that boss want to give promotions to? Who will that boss trust more? Someone who is known to be trustworthy, known to be loving, known to be good, known to be ethical, or someone who's the opposite? You see? So when we develop these qualities, we become attractive to all people. It benefits us certainly spiritually, but even materially. And that's the thing that's truly wonderful about this.